Hello and welcome to episode of the Bubbs on Sports podcast. Today is Monday, November 13th. Hope everyone's having a good day so far and had a good rest of their day yesterday. Hope everybody had a good weekend. It was a packed weekend in the world of sports as you had a lot of basketball, a lot of hockey, college basketball has begun along with a lot of college football on Saturday and another big Sunday full of NFL action where there was a whole lot of nail biters, a record-setting Sunday with the amount of buzzer beater wins, a whole lot of field goal winners, a lot of close games. A couple games in that 1 o'clock window, that early window, didn't look good to start, but turned out to be really good games, turned out to be exciting. So it was a good day overall yesterday as Week 10 of the NFL will conclude tonight with the Broncos and the Bills up in Buffalo. Bills look to try and get the stank out of their mouth or stank out of their system, whatever you want to say, after last week's loss to the Bengals. And for the Broncos, they're trying to keep their season, I guess, slightly alive. They're trying to give their fan base a little bit of hope. They won 2 straight going into the bye week. They beat the Packers. They then beat the Chiefs. Went into the bye week. They're 3-5. If they can find a way to go on the road and beat Buffalo and get to 4-5, you start thinking as a Broncos fan, okay, they're starting to win some games. I'm not saying they're going to go on and do big things. I mean, it's not going to be easy to win tonight. But if they get to 4-5, with the way things started being at 1-5, as a Bronco fan, they give you a little bit of hope. You can at least talk and think the possibility of maybe them going on a little bit of a run here, getting to a 7-8 win mark and playing meaningful games in December, which just a couple weeks ago seemed completely unrealistic. So we'll see what the Broncos do tonight. It's a huge game for Buffalo because they cannot afford to fall to 5-5. The division continues to be wide open in the AFC East. They got some help this weekend with a couple teams losing like the Bengals, so they have an opportunity to gain a little bit of ground in the AFC playoff picture. Big one tonight at home. The Bills are 3-0 this season coming off of a loss, so we'll see if they can be 4-0 coming off their 4th loss of the season tonight against the Broncos at home. But we'll start today with the Jets. We'll also get to the Giants. What a brutal day it was for the New York Jets and the New York Giants. And I enjoyed watching a lot of the games yesterday. Again, that Lions-Chargers game was phenomenal. The Texans-Bengals game, C.J. Stroud continues to impress, and I was really impressed with him yesterday because he faced some adversity, had the fumble, had the pick, especially late in the game, had the interception. Easily could have kind of crumbled up in a ball and been afraid and played conservative, but he went out there, led the drive, went down the field, kicked the game winner. C.J. Stroud's got to be in the MVP conversation. We'll get to all that a little bit later on, but we got to start with the New York Jets today because the Giants were a disaster. So were the Jets, but let's be honest here. Giants season's over. They got crushed again. Tommy DeVito, Cowboys, 17.5-point favorites. Did we really think the Giants were going to go in there and even be competitive? So there's no surprise there. From a New York Jet point of view, they fall again, they lose again, and they now fall to 4-5 on the season. The Las Vegas Raiders improved to 5-5 on the season. And again, I apologize to the NFL fans out there that had to sit and watch this garbage for the 2nd week in a row. And the garbage I am talking about is this offense that is absolutely putrid and is absolutely embarrassing. And I think continues to get worse every week. For some reason, it feels like this team is hitting new lows every single week. You're wondering if rock bottom really is a rock bottom at this point as a Jet fan, because every week with this offense, especially the last 2, it has gotten worse and worse and worse. And you think about last week, this team was 4-3. The Bills just lost against the Bengals. The division in the AFC East was wide open. Dolphins lose again, all that stuff. And you look, a week ago today, I was sitting here talking about how massive of a game it was for the New York Jets against the Chargers to go out, get the 5-3. I thought for sure the offense was going to come out. I thought they'd play well, all that stuff. And boy, were we wrong. Because a week ago today, this Jet team was 4-3. And in less than a week, they have dropped 2 games that they should have won. 2 games that their defense dominated yet again, and 2 games that the offense doesn't score a touchdown, 2 games that the offense continues to hurt themselves with penalties, And all you hear from this coaching staff is, we got to figure it out. We got to clean it up. Do all this. When there is no accountability, so there seems to be no urgency to clean up any of the penalties. And the New York Jets are now sitting here, a week ago, had a realistic shot at the division, and are now 4-5. And I know Tyler Conklin mentioned today, it's, the season's not over, everyone acting like it's over. Fine, you can say that. I respect that. But let's be real here. This Jet team is not going anywhere this season. And it's only going to get more difficult. Because guess what? They got 2 games coming up against 2 divisional opponents. The Bills on the road, never an easy place to play. The Jets haven't beaten the Bills on the road since week 17 of 2019, where the Bills were benching all their starters. So in reality, the last time the Jets won a meaningful game in Buffalo, who knows? Who knows? Although they match up well against the Bills, with a quarterback, and defensively, they're not winning. And Miami, it's going to probably be a disaster on a short week on Black Friday. And you even look further down the schedule, they've still got Miami twice, so they'll have Miami one more time. And you looked at some of those games like the Falcons and the Texans early in the year, and you said to yourself, oh, those are easy wins. Those are easy wins. Texans aren't easy anymore. They're a playoff team. They've got a quarterback right now that's in the MVP conversation. The New York Jets can't score a touchdown. So I don't want to hear that we're beating Houston either. The reality is this team might be a 6-win team this year. They really might be a 6-win team, which would be obviously one worse than last year. Another season down the drain for the New York Jets. Last night was the disgrace. They got out-coached, outclassed by an interim head coach and a rookie quarterback in Aiden O'Connell. And I understand Antonio Pierce, and I respect what he's done. I understand he has completely shifted that locker room from where it was under Josh McDaniels to where it is now. Has come in, won 2 games. They're 5-5. They're alive in the AFC playoff race. They're very much alive. And another reason why this hurts too is this is 2 conference losses for the Jets. So not only do the Jets have to find a way to get to the 9-10 win mark, they also have to find a way to overcome these tiebreakers. Because the Chargers and the Raiders now also have the tiebreaker over them. So people are saying, oh, just get to 9 wins, they'll get in. It's not that easy. Because the tiebreaker scenarios, who knows what's going to happen with the Bills? It's a disaster. It is a complete and utter disaster. It is the same thing as last season. I think it's actually worse than last year because we were 6-3 last year through 9 games. This year we're 4-5. So I think it's actually worse, and I also think this offense is worse. And you look at the numbers, this offense is one of the statistically worst offenses we've seen in NFL history. They haven't scored a touchdown starting in their own territory in 49 consecutive drives. They've scored 1 touchdown in the last 4 games. 1 touchdown in the last 4 games. Or 1 touchdown rather in the last 3 games. And outside of that Breece Hall touchdown, they have yet to score a touchdown in the month of November. They might not score a touchdown this entire month. Let's take a look at some other numbers. Over the last 2 games, the New York Jets had 8 penalties this week. They had 9 penalties last week. Undisciplined football. That's a direct reflection on the coaching staff. 17 penalties that adds up to. The New York Jets, the last 2 games, 17 penalties, 18 points. Let that sink in. They have 18 points and 17 penalties. There was a point in that game last night where the Jets had more penalties than first downs. I mean, when does it end as a Jet fan? When does this abysmal offense that we watch year in and year out where everything is so difficult, when does it actually end? Somebody's got to be held accountable for this. Somebody has to. Whether it's Saleh, Nate Hackett, who's been a complete disaster, and the reality is with Nathaniel Hackett, he ain't going anywhere. He's not. As much as I'm all on board of firing him, as much as I'm all on board of making changes, I'm all on board of doing something to shake things up. Whether it's a change of play caller, whether it's getting rid of somebody, whether it's benching somebody, cough, the quarterback. Something to try and put a little bit of juice into this offense. Because the fact of the matter is, it can't get much worse. And I don't want to hear, what is Trevor Siemian going to do? What is Tim Boyle going to do? Like, what have they done in their career? The reality is, you look back and you think about Mike White. What did Mike White do in his career before he broke out a little bit with the New York Jets? It can't get any worse. It's rock bottom. The offense is the worst in football. It can't get any worse. So don't sit here and say, what are the other guys going to do? Try something. Figure something out. Changes need to be made. Players, coaches need to be held accountable. The GM needs to be held accountable. He did nothing after the Aaron Rodgers injury. His free agent signings have been a disaster. He refused to address the need at wide receiver. He refused to address the need at offensive line during the trade deadline. He refused to address, going back to April and May, the need for a backup quarterback. And here we are, 4-5, season pretty much down the drain or pretty close to it. That's the same thing as last year. And Zach Wilson last night went 23 of 39, 263 yards. Had the pick. Look, the reality is he telegraphed the pass. He was staring right at Lazard. And I look back at the film a little bit today. I'm still watching it back. I kind of got through the first half. I'm still looking back at the rest of the second half. And then the rest of today, I'll watch the rest of the film. I watched a little bit, today. And he telegraphed the pass. It looked like he had Breece Hall open. Again, it was a 2nd down and 8. Breece Hall was open to his right. He was open in the check down. Could he have gotten Breece Hall? Potentially. There was there was a guy within 4 yards of Breece Hall. Breece Hall could have made a miss. Who knows? He probably would have been able to pick up 4 yards. It would have gone to a 3rd and 4. And in that situation, it would have been 4-down territory for the Jets. At least I would have hoped that Saleh wouldn't have settled for a field goal there. I think it was 4-down territory personally. I know he had the 2-minute, but either way, it doesn't matter. The Jets turn it over anyway. He orchestrated a nice drive there. He did some good things. But it ultimately starts and ends with the quarterback. You can't telegraph a pass like that. That is year 1, and he's in year 3. That is a rookie mistake. It's a rookie mistake. And we've talked about that a lot with Zach. Lazard that was his read. He stared at him all the way. All the way he stared at him. And just just a little bit earlier in the game, he had the no-look pass. It might have been the same drive, if I remember correctly. And that's what makes you so confused is he makes the no-look pass, and then boom, which was a beautiful play. I'll give it to him. And again, that's something that Zach can do. He plays better when he's not thinking. He was under pressure. He no-looked the pass, and it was a dot. I don't know how he does that, but yet he can't throw a pass without staring down a receiver. Linebacker jumped the route, picked off, game over. And then you got Tyler Conklin in the end zone playing defense against Garrett Wilson on the Hail Mary, which I'll be honest, I know a lot of Jet fans today are saying, the Hail Mary. I didn't lose sleep over the Hail Mary, I'll be honest, because we should have never been in that situation anyway. We shouldn't have. If it was some crazy comeback the Jets were making where, where it was last play of the game and is some crazy comeback and, whatever happened, however the game went and that play happened, I would have been frustrated. But I'm not frustrated with the Hail Mary because the Jets didn't deserve to win that game yesterday with the way they were penalized. They were unprepared again. Again, that's another question I have. What does this coaching staff do during the week? Does Saleh just run the stairs at the facility all day? Is that all he does? Is he just run up and down the stairs at the facility? And do they even watch film? Because it's the same garbage week in and week out. And I'm so sick and tired of, we got to figure it out. We got to figure it out. Zach's been saying that since he joined the league. He's been saying that since his first game against the Panthers. We got to figure it out. We got to figure it out. Hackett will come out there on Thursday. He'll try and take some accountability, or Wednesday, whenever the heck he speaks to the media. Who cares? He says a bunch of nonsense anyway. He'll come out there and say, it's on me. I've been bad, all that stuff. But yet they won't make adjustments. And again, I go back to the accountability aspect of it all. The Jets had 8 penalties last night. for 83 yards. That's coaching. Uzama had terrible penalties. A touchdown was taken off the board because of penalties. We've talked about this for the last couple weeks. Penalties, 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 penalties. And they keep shooting themselves in the foot. That's all on coaching. And I got a bad vibe from Saleh. I believe it was, I don't know if it was last week going into this game or if it was the Giant game going into the Charger game, where he said he's okay with he said something about he's okay with the penalties that happened during the play, but he's not okay with the penalties that are the extracurricular stuff, whether it's a late hit or whether it's like a late hit, whether it's a unsportsmanlike conduct, an illegal shift, something that happens before the play or after. But he said during the play, you can't do anything about those. He said something like that. I'm going to have to go and look and try and find and dig up the quote. Because that, to me, when he said that, I did not understand how he was trying to he was justifying penalties. That's what he was doing. He was justifying penalties. And you wonder why they continue to be penalized, because there's zero accountability. Uzama, who's been a disaster since we've signed him. He's been a disaster. Penalty, is still out there. Still out there doing absolutely nothing. While Ruckert and guys like that sit the bench, don't get action. Another guy, too. Michael Carter. What has he done to earn the right to go out there and play every week? Maybe he looks good in practice, and that's all the Jets care about, but what has he done? What has he done? Izzy, activate him. Brownlee, I've said it, activate him. It's a disgrace. It is an absolute disgrace. Same thing as last year. The 8 penalties is all on coaching. It's all on coaching. And it also starts up at the top, too, Douglas. I mean, the reality is, this is a results-driven business. We talk about this all the time in sports. It's a results-driven business. It is. Basketball, baseball, football, hockey, soccer, whatever sport it is, it's a results-driven business. If you're losing games, nobody's going to care about what you're doing inside. Nobody's going to care about practice. Nobody's going to care. Nobody's going to care about the process of the way you do things, the all gas, no break. Nobody cares if on Sundays or whenever you're playing Thursday, Monday, Black Friday, whatever the heck it is, if you're losing those games. And the reality of the situation is, Joe Douglas's record as a general manager is 24-51. And Robert Saleh's record is not a lot better. Isn't better. His record as a head coach, 15-28. That's a .349 winning percentage. And it's the same thing as last year, where if we remember last year, he had the finish t-shirts. The t-shirts that said finish on them. And he said, December football, all that stuff, we got to finish now. Here the Jets are in the same spot as last season. He talked about a couple weeks ago how they've got a good plan coming out of the bye week to not go through a slump coming out of the bye week. And here the Jets are out of the bye week. They're 1-2 and easily could be 0-3 if it wasn't for the miracle against the New York Giants. If the Jets were playing any other team in the NFL that Sunday, they would have lost that game. So the bye week adjustments that Saleh tried to make obviously didn't work, because it's been a disaster since. So blame falls everywhere. Blame falls on Douglas. Blame falls on Saleh. Blame falls on this atrocious quarterback that we roll out there every Sunday. Blame falls on the guys around him, these penalties. I thought Zach yesterday, again, I didn't think he necessarily played bad. I thought he's been a lot worse. I would tell you this. It was his best game since the bye week, which is sad to say because it was still a game that didn't include a touchdown, and it was still a game where he had a terrible turnover. And again, we've praised Zach all year for not turning the ball over as much. Great, good. Well, last night in a big moment, he turned the ball over. And the reality of the situation is, too, you cannot wait until under 5 minutes, under 3 minutes in games to finally conduct an offense, finally find ways to drive down the field a little bit. You just can't do it. You can't wait that long. You can't shoot yourselves in the foot for 55 minutes and in the last 5 minutes say, oh, it's okay. We'll drive down the field. We'll score. Deodorant over this win. We've got a lot of issues, but we found a way to win. We'll do it all again next week. 4-5. Defense, there's nothing else I have to say about the defense. I mean, they're dominant. It's only a matter of time until these guys stop believing in Salah, the locker room as a whole, because it's the same as last year. Because Zach's simply just not good. And the penalties concern you a little bit because the penalties remind me a lot of Todd Bowles. Todd Bowles' teams, all they would do is take stupid penalties. All they would do. And it's the stupid ones, too. The stupid penalties. And that's not, I'll tell you what, that's not good company to be in if you're Salah. It's not good company to be in to have the penalties like Todd Bowles. It's just not. So, Buffalo, Miami, look, you're going to have a defense that's going to keep you in the game. The defense will keep it close. It'll probably be a 10-point game at most, I think. It might be like a 21-10 game or something like that where Buffalo Jets hold them. They force down to the 3 picks, but at the end of the day, it's going to be ultimately the offense that's not going to do anything. They ain't beating the Dolphins, so they're probably going to be 4-7. They're not beating the Browns. They're not beating the Dolphins twice. So they'll lose to the Bills, Dolphins, Texans, Dolphins, Browns. So that's at least 5 more losses, which would put them at 10. I mean, the Falcons aren't well coached. I don't know if they'll sneak one out against Atlanta. The Commanders, I'll be honest, Sam Howell's had some good games. They might actually lose to the Commanders. The Commanders almost went on the road yesterday and beat Seattle. I mean, the reality is we have the worst offense in football, so we could lose to any of those 3 teams that if you want to consider winnable. I think this is a Jet team that probably finishes 6-11, 7-10. I'm gearing probably more towards 6-11 just because they'll probably find a way to go up into Foxborough the last week of the season and lose to the Patriots. They'll find a way. So maybe they'll beat Atlanta and Washington at home, but find a way to lose to New England up in Foxborough because that's what they'll always do, especially if Zach's at quarterback that game. Because for some reason Belichick is in his head and he can't complete simple passes, although it seems like every week defensive coordinators are in this offense's head and they can't move the football at all, so it doesn't really matter who you're playing. That's about it for the offense, defense. That's about it for the game. You move on to the other New York team. Not much to say here. Not much to say about the Giants. They're a disaster as well. The only thing with the Giants is that it's unlike the Jets. The Jets, you went into yesterday's game, and I predicted the Jets lose. I thought the Jets were going to lose yesterday's game. I mean, obviously, I hoped I was wrong, but I had a feeling they were going to lose. I said it last week. I think the season ended last week, personally, when they lost to the Chargers. That was such a deflating loss. Everything went your way. The NFL was handing you that win. If we're being honest, the Chargers didn't want to win that game. They did not play that well. They really didn't. The Jets just were so bad on offense that 6 points is not going to win you a game. But when you go to the Giant game, the one thing with the Giants is we knew they were going to get crushed. We knew they were going to get dominated. The Cowboys have outscored the Giants this year. They've beaten them by a combined 72 points. So the Cowboys own the Giants this season, 49-17 in this one. Week 1, it was a brutal beatdown, 40-0. So total they outscored them 89-17, which is not good. That's obviously 72 points. Prescott, big day, 5 touchdowns. Or 4 touchdowns, rather. 5 touchdowns total. He had 1 on the ground. CeeDee Lamb had 1 on the ground. Rico Dowdle had 1 on the ground, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly. Brandon Cooks had a big day. CeeDee Lamb had a big day. For the Giants, Tommy DeVito, Dak Prescott. Tommy DeVito on the road against Dallas. It's a Cowboys team that's 6-3, almost beat Philly on the road last week, who's 8-1. We knew this was going to happen. I will say this, though, about the Giants. It is a little concerned how non-competitive they've been in these games. Just in the last 2 weeks, they've been outscored 79-13. And they obviously were outscored 89-17 this season against Dallas. You look at some of the other losses. 31-16 against the Dolphins. 30-12 against the Niners. 24-3 against Seattle. The Giants' losses this year have been pretty much all blowouts. Other than the occasional 2 losses against the Jets and the Bills, where they actually hung around, the Jets, it's because the Jets just played so bad offensively. It wasn't that the Giants played well. The Jets were just so awful on offense. And that Bills game, the Bills didn't play great. So I'll give it to them. They actually stepped up and played well that game. Decent, at least on defense. But it's a little concerning for a team last year that was obviously highly competitive, beat the teams they were supposed to beat, were competitive in some of the tougher games. They won a playoff game. I know they've dealt with a lot of injuries. I get all that. But it's very concerning for a team that was there. I don't want to say they were a Super Bowl team, but they were 2 games. They were 1 win away from being a win away from the Super Bowl. They lost in a divisional round. This isn't like it was a team last year that was a 7-win team that showed progress towards the end of the year, and everybody went into this season saying, oh, now they make the next step. No, this was a playoff team that was coached by the coach of the year. And now this is a team that is getting blown out every week. And I understand they don't have a legitimate quarterback. I get that. But they're getting crushed. Like, these games aren't even competitive. They're not even remotely, they stink. Like, they legitimately look like one of the worst offenses, one of the worst teams in football. And I get it's Tommy DeVito. I understand that. But no way you can be letting up 30 plus, 40 points plus every single week. I mean, last week, the Raiders aren't the greatest show on turf. They let up 30 points against them. And they almost let up a 50 bomb against Dallas. They're laying down in these games. They're not even trying. That's a reflection on the coaching. A lot of it is. I'm not saying Dable should be fired, but somebody's got to take some sort of blame for this. Somebody's got to be a scapegoat in a way. Whether that's Mike Kafka, maybe that's just the quarterback position. I know Daniel Jones, the injury, but maybe that's just their way of saying, you know what? We're drafting a quarterback. Let us develop a quarterback with our staff, all that stuff. And maybe that's their way of saying, you know what, fresh start, one more chance. But guys yelling at each other on the sideline, guys yelling, some confrontations with Dable between him and the players. They're going into these games sleepwalking. They're non-competitive. All signs of poor coaching and a lost locker room. So, look, again, I'm not saying fire Dable, but there are certainly concerns there. I mean, the reality is they're 2-8. You could twist and turn every way you want. Injury this, injury that. Again, results-driven business. They're 2-8. And they've let up 79 points in the last 2 weeks, and they let up 89 points against their division rival this year. And the first game, you can't make the excuse that there were injuries. They were fully healthy in that first game. They just got completely outcoached and dominated to start the season at home, which just put a bad taste in their mouth. It's crazy to think that the New York Giants, they don't have that second half against the Cardinals. They're 1-9 right now. 1-9, which looks a whole lot. I don't know if it looks a whole lot worse than 2-8, but they're right there with the Carolina Panthers. If they're on their way to, they might be able to muster up maybe 4 wins. I mean, I don't know. They'll get Washington this week. They also get New England. So they do have a couple games coming up where they can find ways to win. But, I mean, all in all, they might win, 4 games this year? Maybe they'll beat Washington. Maybe they'll beat New England. Maybe they'll beat, Green Bay, I don't even think they'll beat them. I mean, the Giants are one of the worst teams in football. I don't think they'll beat anybody really, but it's a terrible spot. They're 2-8. It feels worse than some of the lost seasons they've had in like 2018, 2019, stuff like that, where even the year, it felt like even the year after McAdoo, it feels worse than that in a way. It really does. The McAdoo year was a disaster. But they're not even in these games. These games aren't close. Like, they're over in the first quarter, which is it just is a disgrace. So you look around the rest of the NFL. Colts over the Patriots. Gotta love it. Gotta love another New England Patriots loss. Texans over the Bengals. So the Texans, again with C.J. Stroud, who's got to be seriously in the MVP conversation. I said it last week, and I'll say it again. Forget Offensive Rookie of the Year. He's got that locked up. He's got to be in the MVP conversation, and the Texans are right in the heart of the playoff mix at 5-4, and it's huge now that they now have the tiebreaker over Cincinnati. Cincinnati looked really hot there for a while. Definitely a bump in the road for them as they fall to 5-4 on the season. Steelers over the Packers. Steelers, Mike Tomlin, play games close all the time. This one came down to the final play. One of the final plays, interception in the end zone. Patriots come away with the victory, or Steelers rather come away with the victory. Bucks over the Titans. Browns with a massive comeback victory fueled by their defense over the Ravens, a big 16-point fourth quarter. The AFC North is so exciting, and you got the Browns Steelers next week, but you got a 7-3 Ravens team, you got a 6-3 Steelers team, 6-3 Browns team, 5-4 Bengals team. You can make the case for every one of those teams to win that division. You really could. Even with the Bengals being 5-4, and they had a bump in the road, this is still a team that, with Joe Burrow playing well, they can beat anybody at any time in the NFL. And you got a Raven team that, even though they had a bump in the road, they were blowing teams out before that. You're going to lose games. And you got the Browns who just knocked off the Ravens. You've got the Steelers who are finding ways to win. Their defense is dominant. They're finding ways. That AFC North is so strong this year. It's an awesome division. A lot of fun to watch. Those games are always fun. Tough, physical football, well-coached teams. It's going to be a very entertaining race to the finish. And it's funny with all those teams, too, is they're all kind of different. Like, the Bengals and the Ravens are more of your high-flying, fun, good, dominant offenses. I shouldn't say the Ravens are high-flying because they don't throw the ball much, but they're a ground-and-pound team that just runs it down your throat, and they put up a ton of points. They also have a solid defense. The Bengals are very good offensively, solid defense, but when you look at like the Browns and the Steelers, their identity is their defense. Steelers, their defense, phenomenal, headlined by T.J. Watt. And when you look at the Browns, Myles Garrett, all those pieces, their defense is dominant. As much as their offense, again, Steelers have had some issues with offense. Browns' offense with Watson has been hot, cold. Hasn't been quite what they expected in the investment in Watson, but they're finding ways, and that division's wide open. It was probably not smart of me to pick against the Niners coming out of a bye week. I'm realizing that now. The Niners, I don't know who's going to be able to stop them. Now, next week and the weeks coming will be the true test because teams now have film. Teams now will be able to look and see what they do and how they attack you with Chase Young and Nick Bosa. The Jags, facing a Niner team coming off a bye week, never were able to see what they were doing, were obviously caught unprepared. And the Niners came out fresh out of bye week. They heard all the criticism for a week, which might have been a good thing for them to say that might have been a great motivating factor. Again, their bye came at a great time. Lost 3 straight, dealing with injuries. They got Debo back. Purdy an opportunity to kind of take a break, reset, come out, clear his mind. 34 points. Purdy was great. Defense was great. Niners look back to their old selves, 6-3, and they get a winnable game next week against Tampa. Josh Dobbs and the Vikings. I'm rooting for the Vikings, Josh Dobbs. I'm all aboard. Vikings, Josh Dobbs will get to the postseason. Dare I say they win a postseason game? Maybe I'm drinking the Kool-Aid a little too much, but I am a little frustrated because as much as I love the story of Josh Dobbs, as a Jet fan, you sit here and say, where would we be right now if Douglas traded a 6th-round pick for Josh Dobbs? We wouldn't be 4-5, I'll tell you that for sure. Cardinals over the Falcons. Kyler Murray gets the job done. Cardinals hurt their draft positioning. Lions over the Chargers, 41-38. That was a lot of fun to watch. Big day for Keenan Allen. Chargers, same story. Offense dominates. Coaching, defense loses. And the Seahawks over the Commanders late in that one. So tonight you got the Bills and the Broncos. Bills 5-4, Broncos 3-5, 8:15 Eastern. Buffalo 7.5-point favorites at home, coming off a loss. I'll tell you right now, I love Buffalo coming off a loss. They're 3-0 this season. They're at home. It's a Denver team that Buffalo matches up well against because their defense is, well, although it's been a little bit better, they still can't seem to catch a nosebleed or stop a nosebleed. Bills, according to ESPN Analytics, matchup predictor, giving them a 78.7% chance of winning. They're only giving the Broncos a 21.1% chance of winning. I do think this will be a closer game. I am actually I am highly looking forward to this game tonight. I really do think this has an opportunity to be a really entertaining football game. I know on paper you look and you say, 5-4 Bills, Josh Allen against the Broncos at home. This is going to be a disaster. But I actually think it's going to be entertaining. I think both these offenses are going to come out and they're going to play well. I think we're going to see some scoring tonight. And I hope we do. Because, again, to the NFL fans out there that had to watch the 28 combined points that we saw last night, and then we had to watch the 6 points that the Jets put up last week on Monday night, I'm hoping that tonight, just for NFL fans' sake, we see some good football. Because the primetime games over the last 3 primetime games, Monday, Thursday, and then last night, have been a complete disaster. So I'm hoping tonight we get some good action, because the primetime games this weekend are actually a lot of fun. Thursday night, you got Ravens-Bengals, which should be awesome. 2 teams coming off a loss. That's going to be a lot of fun in Baltimore. Sunday night, depending on how this game goes tonight, you got Vikings-Broncos. But hey, even if the Broncos lose this game, give me Josh Dobbs on primetime all day. So I'll take Josh Dobbs on primetime next Sunday night. And then you got Chiefs-Eagles at Arrowhead on Monday. 2 teams coming off a bye. So that should be a lot of fun. So even though the primetime games have been really bad over the last week and a half, I think tonight hopefully will be the switching over from a couple really bad primetime games in a row to, partially because the Jets are involved, to a couple really good primetime games in a row. I think tonight's actually going to be entertaining. I think tonight's going to be a good, high-scoring game. Bills dealing with injuries, obviously, defensively. They haven't looked the same on defense since Milano went out. He was the biggest hit. Broncos have stunk on defense all year. Russell Wilson's actually been playing good this year. Statistically, he's been solid. So I'm going to take the Bills tonight, but I'm going to take the over. The over-under set at 47.5. I'll take the Bills. I don't think the Bills cover the 7.5. I'm going to take the Broncos plus 7.5. I'll take the Bills 27-23. I think we're going to get some scoring tonight. I think we're going to see some scoring. Neither defense has been, very, very, I guess if you want to say, the Bills have dealing with injuries. Broncos have just been struggling all year defensively. I'll take the over on the over-under of 47.5. I'll take the Broncos plus 7.5, but I'll take the Bills to win this game coming off a loss. Bills against this defense, they'll be able to put up enough points. But I'm going to take the Bills here, and I think it's going to be a close, good, fun game, which I think NFL fans need. I'm rooting for a close game because NFL fans need it after watching the Jets on primetime, which can make your eyes bleed. I know mine did. Again, I'm sorry for that. So that'll do it. We'll have more content coming your way this week. We'll have a Bills preview up on the show a little later in the week. And as always, check out my Talking Rangers podcast I do. We'll have a video up tomorrow. We'll have another video up potentially a little later in the week. The Rangers are off for this entire week until Saturday. Massive win last night. I'll tell you what, as a sport fan right now, I'm feeling very deflated because, if we're being honest, I'll start with this. The Yankees, with Hal Steimer and Brian Cashman speaking, were an absolute disaster. I mean, that made me feel worse about the direction of the franchise. I talked about the Jets already. Don't need to go into them. The Nets are in a rebuild. They're 5-5. They've been competitive. I've been impressed with a lot of things with them. Claxton play, unfortunately. Claxton was back, played well. Mikal Bridges has been a little up and down, but starting to find his groove a little bit. Cam Thomas was been so good, but got hurt, unfortunately. Lonnie Walker, I've been impressed with him. Dennis Smith Jr., our bench depth is great. There's a lot of good pieces, but at the end of the day, they're 5-5. They're a competitive team that will probably be a play-in borderline playoff team. So the Rangers are the really team right now that I root for that have legitimate chances of going deep in the postseason and legitimately have an opportunity to win a championship. They really do. Because the Yankees aren't winning anytime soon. The Nets are in a rebuild. Although it seems like they're headed in the right direction, they're not championship caliber roster right now. I'd hope to think in 2-3 years when some of these pieces develop, Cam Johnson, Cam Thomas, Cal Bridges, all these guys, maybe bring in another, not star, but another higher profiled veteran, potentially. They can be back in the conversation here if they build this thing the right way in the next 2 to 3 seasons with some good draft capital as well. But, they're not there right now. So it's really the Rangers. It's the Rangers. And I've said this for a while now. I think the next New York sports team to win a championship is going to be the New York Rangers. I firmly believe that. Because let's be honest here, Yankees, Mets, I would like, again, part of it, they don't, for the Yankees and the Mets, even if they might build, let's say they build super teams this offseason and they're both the favorites to win this, World Series. The Rangers, obviously, Stanley Cup's before the World Series. So I still think that'll happen. Knicks have been kind of up and down. I still don't think I don't think the Knicks are there yet, personally. I don't think either basketball team is. Islanders have been a train wreck. You had fire, Lambert chance at UBS Arena the other night. They'll get another opportunity tonight against an Oilers team that just fired their head coach and obviously has Chris Knobloch taken over, who was the Hartford Wolfpack coach for the New York Rangers and came up a couple games to interim during the COVID season. But I still do believe it. I strongly believe the Rangers, and I'm not trying to say, they're going to win a championship, but I do believe that. I'm not trying to get too cocky because we're not even a quarter way through the NHL season. It's November, right? I'm not trying to get too cocky, and the Devils are going to get better. I expect them to. They're without Jack Hughes right now. Once they get Hughes back, you expect them to start to play better. Although their defense and goalie is still an issue, even with Jack Hughes. But Jack Hughes can cover some of that up because he's so good. But the Rangers, I do believe they're right there. And it seems like we got the coach right now. So they've been a lot of fun to watch. So check out that podcast as well. I'll have more content coming out on there over the next coming days and throughout the rest of the season. So that'll do it for an episode of the Bubbs on Sports podcast. Enjoy the rest of your Monday. Enjoy the game tonight. We'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.